Westville Fire Radio.
This episode's brought to you by Notorious Fire Company. Firefighter owned and operated, Notorious Fire Company manufactures and creates quirky and unique items for the fire service. Whether it's your stainless steel water bottles, tumblers, 4-in-1 koozies, you can decorate your emotional support water bottle with more than 100 different designs they offer so very much. From apparel to swag to stickers, they got you covered. Check them out at notoriousfire.com. That's NOTORIOUS, notoriousfire.com. And check them out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Notorious Fire. And this month with the podcast, if you use coupon code Fire Radio June 2023, that is Fire Radio June 2023, you'll get free shipping on all orders within the U.S. So check them out, notoriousfire.com. Lenny and the crew, they're making great stuff, and I have to tell you, with the summer upon us, the sticker packs are out of control. You got everything from Star Wars to pinups and everything in between. Slap them on your beer fridges, your coolers, and your tumblers, and celebrate the summer in style with Notorious Fire. A good supporter and longtime friend. We're happy to have him on the podcast with us. Check him out, notoriousfire.com, and coupon code FIRERADIO June 2023 for free shipping all across the U.S. This episode's brought to you by Box Alarm Grills. When your apparatus arrives on scene, are you making the best showing? Looking to set your rig apart from everyone else? Want your engine, truck, or rescue to be easily identifiable? There is a solution. With large aluminum grill numbers and full-width rear mud flaps from Box Alarm Grills. Formed by Danny and a team of fellow firefighters, Box Alarm Grills gets it. They know what it means to show pride in your ride, delivering the quality construction and design that fire departments demand. That's why their grill numbers and mud flaps grab attention, enhance visibility, and make your fleet recognizable on scene while responding or just driving around town. Built in the USA by a family-owned business, Box Alarm Grills is quickly becoming the choice of fire companies, apparatus planners, and fire truck manufacturers with out-of-the-box or custom solutions. Check out functional, durable grill numbers and mud flaps from Box Alarm Grills today at boxalarmgrills.com and on Facebook and Instagram. And like Danny and his crew like to say, add pride to your ride. Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio, finally back with a new episode. It has been a week or two, a lot of travel. I was at a conference down in Texas, the Gone to Texas Fire Forum. Excuse me. It was a good week. A lot of craziness on the training side, the educational side, and the brotherhood and camaraderie. Obviously, the fellowship was on point down in Texas. But today's episode is going to be a lot of fun. This is a guy that I met several years ago on a stop through Westville, New Jersey, and I've gotten to know these guys. I stop in there regularly when I'm down in that area. I've gotten to know Chief Eric Farley, and I just want to welcome him to the show today. Chief, how are you, brother?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic, man. This is fun to get you on. Every time I stop in down in Westville when I'm down that way, you guys open your doors. You're super kind. We sit down. I think the last time I was there, you guys were eating lunch, and I just sat down with you and just chatted for a little bit. And it was like we just picked up from where we left off on the last go-around. And you guys are just a fun group of guys, and I enjoy it. And what I really enjoy about it most is the passion you all have there for the tradition and legacy of the job. And I know that is led by you because I do know how important history is to you, and we're going to get into all that. But man, just seeing how squared away the department is, the equipment, the building, the apparatus, you name it, the list goes on and on. A lot of work going in down there in Westville, brother.
Yeah, it's nonstop.
You say that so nonchalant, but it's a lot of work, man. It's a combination department, career and volunteer. You're the career fire chief. You got 37 years in the fire service, 25 as a career fireman, and 13 years as the chief of the department, correct?
Correct. Yep.
You're a busy man.
Yep. It's as I said, it's never ending, and it's a 24-hour cycle here.
Well, and you and I were joking before we started the podcast that you actually, it's like it feels. I said, "Are you actually working today? Or are you off?" And you say, "I work every day." And I know that you actually mean that because I know on your days off you do come in from home and all of that as well. So I do know how busy you are down there. Give me a little background about yourself, man. Where did the foundation of the fire service come from for you? And then maybe we'll just roll right into the history of Westville and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm first generation. I have no family history in the fire service. I was actually born and raised in South Philadelphia. My parents were born and raised in Philadelphia. That got to the point where in the mid '70s they wanted to get the kids out of the city, get to the suburbs. We end up here in Westville, New Jersey, and it went from there to where coming from the city, you don't understand how the suburbs work or volunteer fire companies. It's all new to you. I said, coming from Philly, red fire trucks. Here at Cover Westville, there's two volunteer fire companies. One on in the center of town, the one on the south end, and the one where was a Maxim House, all red fire trucks, and then independent was actually blue and white fire trucks. It was probably the first time I ever seen a fire truck that wasn't red in my life.
Right.
At that point, and said first generation to where again getting involved in a small town back then where everybody was involved in something, everybody volunteered in something. And I said, as a kid, walking from the side of town I lived to the local candy store was next door to the firehouse. Walking past the firehouse, they had the classic glass doors, looking in, seeing the trucks, walking back and forth. And it leads up to later on a group of guys I'm hanging with that I went to school with that were my friends. Their fathers were volunteer firemen. And the way the town was back then, a lot of people served within the two fire companies. We had a fire horn system, and the way it worked, when it was emergency, the fire horns would blow, and you would look out your front doors, and you seen guys running out of their houses, jumping in cars, blue lights going on, and racing to which side of town or which firehouse they served in, and that must have been something that just kicked off for me to where it was just something that it was neat to see, and the way they got activated, and they went to work.
I always, so many of these episodes when I talk about guys in the foundation of where they found their journey and where it began, some of their most earliest memories is the impact the local fire company had on them. You walking past the firehouse every day, going to the candy store, walking to the corner and being able to look in through the glass doors and to see the trucks in there. I mean, those memories are vivid for you, I'm sure. And the impact of that is just, I love it. I love how so many people have a very similar story about their foundational roots and their earliest memories.
Yeah, I mean, it was a neat time, and it was a neat time in the town. Obviously, over years things changed when it comes to services today, but back then, like I said, it stuck out to me, and I can just remember when the horns blew, the light that the town came alive. I mean, you just knew this to step back and watch, and you had anywhere from 50 to 80 guys moving to two different firehouses.
Yeah.
And again, for them, knowing later on, it was also an internal thing. Obviously, there's a rivalry who's getting there first. You find that out later, but as a 10-year-old kid, you don't pick up on that.
I love what you just said. The town came alive, right? The horns blow, the town comes alive. And I remember that very much as a kid too, man. Those days of volunteers running out of their houses, jumping in their cars with blue lights. They had the old Maltese cross with a blue wobbler in the middle, right? I don't know if you remember those, right?
Yeah, the old teardrops were going.
Yeah, teardrops, right? Guys would sling them out of their window on top of their roof, magnetic, and plug it in a cigarette lighter and race to the firehouse. And at that time, for me, it was a small town. We only had, 2 traffic lights, I think, in the whole town. So it was like, it's not what it is today. Right now, even with the volunteer fire department today, most departments don't have sirens or horns anymore to alert the town. The town doesn't even know the apparatus are going out unless it's in their neighborhood. We got traffic lights at every corner now, 2-lane roads turned into 4-lane roads. The whole makeup of the community has changed drastically, just like the fire service has,
Yeah, and I tell that story a lot to the guys who are here today. Just the difference of how much the service changed in 35 years.
100%.
It changed a lot. Yeah.
I'm just making notes, so don't deal with my quietness as we're going, because these are really good topics. But so this is, put it in perspective for me. Then is this like the 80s, like early 80s? What's the time frame for you?
Watching it as coming to said early 80s, so I'm ready to come in around 85, 86, and that again, that's the other part of when you talk about two fire companies.
Yeah.
So obviously there was two fire companies in town. There was the downtown fire company, was the Union Fire Company, and their history dates back to 1898, pre-borough Westville. Westville doesn't get established until 1914, and then you have the Independent Fire Company on the south end of town. They come in around in 1907. So again, the history of two fire companies. But when you're coming of age, I have to make the next decision. Where am I going? Which one? So the way it was set up back then, Union Fire Company again was an all Maxim house, two engines, and a ladder company. Independent was a Mac firehouse, two engines, ambulance, and a rescue truck. So in most cases is again what side of town you live on or what type of job you want to do. Do you want to get involved with ladder work? You want to get involved with the rescue of motor vehicle crashes? So you kind of had those options. As a kid coming up, the next decision was, and obviously go back to when you're a 15-year-old kid, how long a year is. So to join independent, you had to be 15 years old. To join union, you had to be 16. And I was at the point where I wanted to go to union. One, again, looking through the glass doors, the red trucks, and then the ladder truck was sitting there. And that's what I wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
Then when you're with your friends and your dads or members, and some of them are going, to the other firehouse. And again, to get to the south end is a little further for me. Again, not knowing we're going to be merging in 1988, that might have
right.
the point. But actually, on my 15th birthday, a member from the Independent Fire Company actually came to my house, knocked on my door to bring me up to join.
No kidding.
And I had to, and I remember looking at him, thanking him, and saying, "Now I'm going to hold out for a year. I'm going to union."
Can you believe that? Can you believe that a member came to your house to pick you up as a 15-year-old because they knew you were interested? Like
by then,
they were so invested back then.
Yeah, by then the word was out within the group of guys. The guys I hung out with, their dads were there, so obviously they knew they were coming. We're all the same age. So when I hit the age, he actually came to my house, knocked on my door to drive me to the firehouse to join. And it was probably one of the first, I guess, hardest decisions I had to make in the fire service. I had to say no.
Really?
Because I wanted to go to the other company.
You wanted to be a truckman.
Yeah, and it was the
and
longest.
Max. I mean, it's Mac versus Maxim. That's a
Maxim. Yeah.
Oh, Maxim, right? Yeah.
I wanted to go to the Mac. I wanted, and again, we're talking classic. Again, talk about the fire service chain. We're talking, full Maxim house, open cab, convertibles, no jump seats. So we rode in the back, rode on the side of the truck. That's what I wanted to do. And again, I said it was the longest probably year of my life.
I bet it was. Wow.
Yeah.
So take me to that time. You finally get to where you want to be. Well, did it disappoint?
No. Oh no. I could tell you the night that it was time for me to join. A year later, it was my 16th birthday. I went up. It was the day you joined the firehouse back then. It was bingo night, Monday night. It was my 16th birthday. I'm ready to go. I told mom and dad, hold the birthday cake. I got somewhere to be.
Nice.
Went up to the firehouse, and I can remember arriving, bingo night. Tell them I'm there to see the chief, and they're like, okay, it's 7 o'clock at night, and he said, he'll see you at 9:30. I'm like, it's 9:30, and they're like, oh yeah, the chief calls, bingo. You got to wait the coverall. The coverall at 9:30. He's available then. So yeah, and I laughed. I was like, okay, and then. Again, you're hanging around. Guys are saying hello. You're joining this and that. Well, and I didn't realize he said, the chief's going to ask you a question, and I'm like, he's going to ask me a question. They're like, yeah, he's going to ask you, why do you want to join?
Yeah.
So then I get the other junior fireman give me the answer. He said, just tell him to serve the community. That's the answer. That's the answer everybody gives him. To serve your community. He's going to hit you with that. I'm like, yeah, all right. So I'm preparing myself. So finally, 9:30. Yeah, the chief will see you. I go up in the meeting room, sit at the big table. He sits down, slides a legal pad over to me and says, fill out your information, name, address, phone number, the whole thing. Then he asked me the question, why do you want to join? And I gave the answer he told me to give. I want to serve my community. And he just looked at me and said, okay. He says, but let me tell you one thing. He says, you can come in here. You could be a regular person, and do what you got to do, or you can work to get to the top. And that's what he said to me.
Wow.
And I decided to work to get to the top.
You apparently have, sir.
Yeah.
I know how hard you work, your work ethic, how much pride you have in your department. I see it firsthand. You're out there every single day, just like anyone else, polishing, cleaning, maintaining. I mean, you certainly don't wear your title as a way of showing people who you are. You are, I would think, and from what I've seen, you are an equal to everyone in your firehouse and the way it should be. And I believe that you believe in that wholeheartedly. I'm not far off on that, right?
No, and I think for that, I get away with a little more than another chief would, because when it comes down to when discipline has to be said, I think what goes to my favor is they know that I mean it, and they know I do what they do.
Yes.
So it's not as hard. And again, I have topics. You said as chief, when things come to a head where it has to be addressed. And again, any fire chief will tell you there's times where the guys disappoint you, upset you, do something to the point. And when that time comes and I got to put them all in the room, I'm pretty clear to them, and I let it be known that I'm upset. And when I'm going to go off here, it's just not because I'm going off trying to put a show on and I need to yell at somebody. It's to the point where they know I'm passionate about it and where it affected me, and I just want to correct it and go on. And then the other part, when we get into the generational part, is again when I come in the '80s, I'm dealing with guys from World War II.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the greatest generation, to where things were said and when it was over. And
Yes.
I'm like that today. And some of these kids, to where I have to handle things, they think that we're done, we're not friends anymore, I'm never going to talk to you anymore. When it's said, it's over, and I move on.
I'll tell you though, Chief, I don't even think that's generational. It's just people in general today, man.
Yeah.
People are so afraid of conflict, and they worry that conflict will destroy everything, when in fact, when there's hard conversations that have to be had, I think the most important thing for a manager is to be able to have them, but then be able to move past them. And it takes a certain type, man, and we're losing that. We're losing that every day.
And I cover it within the membership. Again, we are, as a team, we support each other. That's the goal. But in the case of, and again, every firehouse is the same no matter what. We have the same type of people, and it's working those people. But to the point where I make general announcements when there's an issue, and we had the discussion. When I'm making general announcements, there's an issue going on. So obviously, you can pick up that the general announcement might be you, that it can be corrected right then and there.
Yeah.
General announcement made, it's fixed. Where if it continues, is not fixed, then I tell them it's going to become a one-on-one meeting. And my goal is not to have an official one-on-one meeting with you, but it will be done. And we're pretty good here. They know that. They know what's expected of them. And again, we're no different. We have good days, we have bad days. And the goal is, again, keep the ball rolling, keeping the service going, and again, serving ourselves and the community. And that's another thing.
Yeah, I really like how you put that, though, man. That is a general notification, is to nip it in the bud before we have to get formal. And I really like that. I think that that's a great way to manage and to lead, because it's an informal way of saying, listen, guys, we got to clean this up. Message is out. It's your choice now, right? Ball's back in your court.
Yeah, when we do it verbally, like I said, every Thursday, we drill every Thursday. So we might start off the drill with it. We might end the drill in a group setting. I mean, you've been in the building. We changed our gear room up to an actual gear room.
I love that.
Where we sit in a room and we see each other, and we discuss the topics. And we do it every week. I try to keep them, obviously, me being here every day, hailing the business end of it. The two other guys I work with are great. They're doing their jobs, from the fire marshal's office to the firefighting, keep managing the equipment, to we handle code enforcement in town. So we know the movements of the town. Being a fire district, kind of separate from the municipality, we get everything set up, but we know what's going on, and we try to keep pumping the information to our members. And then obviously the internal stuff. You see that sometimes we're busy, jobs going on, things that went good, things that didn't go good. Let's cover it. And then again, worrying about today of where we're at on training, where are we at on staffing, and what direction are we going in?
Yeah. So where did all this come from for you? right? So, I mean, I know your early days in how you were mesmerized by the fire apparatus in your community, and then you took a year to pause to get to the fire company you wanted to get to, and then you got in. It sounds like the interaction you had, that 9:30 meeting on your first night with the chief, was pivotal for you in what he said to you and what type of fireman do you want to be. Did you take that to heart and then moving
Oh,
forward? I mean, like, because
yeah. So,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, yeah. So when people say, how I am today, it comes from that. Again, I joined a fire company again with the generations that were in there. Again, this is 1986, and it was again, talking to the juniors today. Some of them get a little mouthy and everything. We weren't allowed to speak. We weren't allowed to talk. You were to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to talk until you were addressed to. I could not walk up to the guys walking up and jump in the conversation. I wasn't allowed. I would have to sit there, and they would have to. And when we tell the stories, people say that's not true. And lucky, my deputy chief today, Steve Cope, we came in together. His father was a member. We're the same age. We joined the fire company at the same time, and I'm glad he's here because he backs my stories up. And the way that work ethic was back then was you came to the firehouse. The apparatus was everything, especially at that time. We weren't being funded by the municipality. Fire trucks were paid for by hoagie sales, bingo, and you had to take care of them. And it's almost like today, because the cost of them, we couldn't afford them. Here we are in 1986. The ladder truck's a 1953 Maxim. That's what we're riding it. They couldn't afford it, so we had to maintain the trucks, maintain the fleet. And when the trucks went out, they came in, we cleaned them, we went on jobs. The hose hit the ramp, we scrubbed the hose down. Everything was always clean and restored, and that was the work ethic. And again, seen, not heard. And I was one of those guys who I kept my ears open. I listened to every conversation. I listened, to the stories. And the other story I tell all the time is, when I first joined, some of the words they were saying I never heard in my life. The way they were talking, and some of the words they were using, and I laughed. And I said I couldn't go home and tell my parents what they were saying. I said they probably wouldn't let me back in the firehouse. It was hysterical. But again, I heard words for the first time in my life of the way they spoke.
Yeah.
And they were a bunch of men that came from the World War II era, and that's the way they talked. And I joined their firehouse, and I went by their rules.
There's something about that, though, right? Because it's like there's this I want to say hierarchy, but obviously there is, but there was this like level of expectation that they were letting you in, and you had to go through the paces because you learn this respect in way to carry yourself that represents what they are and who they are, right? And I think we lack that very much today. And I think there's just something to that. But man, that's so impressionable in a 16-year-old kid to go in and to see how men, and they didn't hold back. Like, that's the other thing too. It's like you can surround yourself with your parents' friends. They don't treat you like that. They don't talk like that in front of you. Adults don't talk like that in front of children. But you go to the firehouse, and that 16-year-old kid grows up very quickly.
Yes. Yeah. But I knew the two different lifestyles of being home and being there.
Absolutely, man.
So I knew it. But I'll tell you, but again, it was the era of every guy in the firehouse, again, had a talent.
Yeah.
You had plumbers, you had builders, you had electricians, you had everything. It was rare that you called an outsider to come in. And then obviously when they get to know you and you become one of them, the last thing you needed was to call somebody for help. You knew you went to the firehouse. You grabbed that guy and said, "Can you come to my house?" Or in the case that we talk about all the time, when they found out you were moving, you didn't have to rent a truck. The pickup trucks were there, and they were lined up to go. That's the way it was.
Yeah, I miss that. That's the way it was.
I miss it.
Yeah, that's how it was when I first got in. I got a few years after you, but you're about 10 years ahead of my time. But it's just I do miss some of those foundational things that we grew up with in the firehouse. It's not that the firehouse is it's just as good as it's always been. It's just different. And that's something I'm struggling with. I'm truly struggling with it right now for sure. And coming off of a conference I was just at this weekend, I closed the conference by talking about the importance of not sacrificing your own values in the firehouse. And if, Dennis Riley, a retired chief from a couple different places, I met him this past weekend, and one of his last slides of his presentation was called Seminar Hangover. And he's like, you're going to go home and you're going to realize that all the excitement and camaraderie and learning that you've done here can get stunted as soon as you walk through the door because your own firehouse doesn't promote that, or the people there don't have the same ambition you have. And so you have that hangover, that seminar hangover. And I'm going to explore that further. But, man, it feels like the foundational values of which Westville was built upon, especially with the camaraderie or the competition between two different volunteer fire companies that became one, right? And for the betterment of the community, right? There was always a sense of tradition and competition, and history mattered. And so, like, that, I think, is the foundational roots. And so you're still very protective of those roots, right?
Yeah, I am. And again, trying to get that out. And I joke with the guys all the time when we're sitting around the table drinking coffee, and I'm talking about the history or things that happened. And if they were sitting right here, they'll tell you. I always look at them and say, "What are you going to talk about when I'm not here anymore?"
That's right.
And they all start laughing. They're like, "We don't know." And you're just trying to get the stories out. So hopefully someday when I'm not here anymore, somebody sits at the table and says, there was a guy here that used to tell us all this, and this is what he said. The same way I did. I didn't speak. I listened, and I heard that generation talk, and I just absorbed it, and said, but back in the Union days in the 80s, there was a guy there that was serving in the 1930s. So I almost have 100 years of, he was there in the 1930s. I can remember him sitting at the bar talking, and I would just sit there, and I would just listen, and I would listen to their stories and hear them talk about how the service changed, how the town changed. And again, this is 100%, volunteer, and they had their livelihoods, their families, and they came up to the building, and I listened to the stories.
Something you just said there really hit me. You had a guy there from the 30s when you were sitting around the table as a kid listening to the storytelling. Yeah. We I think forget now more than ever how important the storytelling is, because in fact he gave you the history of everything. He gave you the history of the fire department, the history of the municipality in which you serve. And you as a kid sitting back and listening to his stories, and it's probably the same stories, just like you do now. You probably tell the same story, every couple of months, another story comes around. It's like, oh, we already heard that one. And guys are like rolling their eyes, right? But but the importance of that allows for them to understand it and also learn and almost feel like they were a part of it too. And I think that that's so important. And that's why storytelling in the fire service matters. It matters so very much. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather.
Did you know Modus makes mini spanners, aka pip-sized ones? The Modus mini spanners are ultra lightweight, only 2.5 ounces each, and fit easily in your bunker gear pockets. So basically, a great product to carry with you at all times. The double tip design allows you to use the mini spanner multiple ways, pushing or pulling. So head over to modusfirerescue.com and tell them the Size Up sent you by using code THESIZEUP, one word, to save 5% off your order.
Yeah, it's a part of it, and it's been, again, I guess we said my entire life within the service is is from them, then now it's in my lap. That's where it's at.
And so, and I know that it is a passion of yours, and I'm sure you do it to protect the legacy of the department and the separate companies. You guys recently had the 25th anniversary of combining the two fire companies within your town. And I know that it was a lot of pomp and circumstance. You guys put together quite a program that involved the town, as well as inviting back a lot of members, correct?
Yeah, it's actually 35th.
35th. I'm sorry, 35.
35th. Yep, 1988. We again, not realizing, starting my service off, that the fire companies were eventually going to merge. Again, it was a decision that was made in May of '87, and we were merged by January 1st, '88. And under 1 year, two fire companies that had almost 70, 85 years of service are going to become one.
So take me down that journey a little bit. I mean, how? I'm sure the guys were like, "Yeah, great idea. Let's do this. Let's." Yeah.
Opposite. It was opposite.
I know.
It was
so
opposite.
So talk about that, please.
Oh man. Yeah. Hopefully the best part. It's gonna be full circle by the time I get to the end. But back,
there you go.
1987. We're talking again. I come in '86, so I'm a year and a half into it, and all of a sudden they're talking about merger, and it sounds crazy. Two companies in the same town, but two different philosophies of fighting fire, two separate entities. It was, the joke was that's what the 50-foot length of hose was designed for, was for the borough of Westville. So, truck to truck. That's the way things went. It was, two different plans.
I like that.
Yeah. So it was crazy. And again, looking back on the way, the fires were put out. It wasn't. They still work together. When they arrived, they worked together. But you can see, our guys listen to our chief, their guys listen to their chief, and everything. So what actually drives us to the merger had nothing to do. When you think of today, when you think merger, you're thinking staffing issues, you're thinking, your financial issues, this, that. And for us, it was financial. Again, we weren't being supported by the municipality. They were throwing a little bit of money towards each fire company. Staffing levels at the time, we're talking 40 guys each without a problem at that time.
Right.
It was modernization of the fleet. We couldn't afford fire trucks anymore, and the only way to do it was to merge. And again, I wasn't directly involved at the time. I'm only 17 years old. Again, keeping my ears open, watching. So when they go to the town and they lay it out that we want to merge and this and that, and the town says, you know what, if you become one fire company, we'll support you. Well, they didn't think it was going to happen. I think it was one of those things to buy time, kind of push them off. Well, the fire companies got serious about it. They put the vote in the floor. The good thing is that with all the record keeping and getting caught up on everything, I went back, and lucky the guys who kept the minute books back then were very good at doing the research of everything that happens. I've been going through minute books, and obviously for the vote of Union Fire Company in '87, I was in the room, and it was a unanimous vote to merge. Nobody said
really.
Yep. And then independent, I got into their books, read the same thing. There was one abstention, and it was unanimous. So it was unanimous vote, but I can tell you people weren't happy about it. They didn't want any parts of it.
Well, change is scary, man. And when you have your own identity, your identity starts to go away when you choose to do something, to move forward.
And it was quick. This is May of '87, and the goal was January 1st, '88. So now you got to get lined up, on the business side of it. There's guys, working the business side of it, and then laying the game plan out. How are we gonna vote? How are we gonna, when do we start voting? Who's going to be the next chief? Because again, you have two different ideas on each and everything.
Yeah.
So so we laid it out, and they kind of kept it. This is where I would say our mistake of the merger came in. We laid the elections out, and you kind of do it again. Be fair, you have your percentage, you're a good member in standings, you get the vote. When the other fire company shows up with more guys, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So in our first case of our first meeting as the Westville Fire Department unofficially to become Westville in November of '87, we had the vote. Independent had more guys in the room, and the three chiefs and the president are all from Independent Fire Company. So now here you are, here we are at Union, we're looking at each other like, I don't know, man. Is this a good idea?
We just lost our identity, right? Like it goes.
Yeah, and there it is. And when it was coming, I can tell you that there was guys who, when that clock hit midnight on New Year's 1988, I never saw them again.
Really?
They packed up, they walked out.
That was it, huh?
And that was it. And
Mm.
then you had the others that decided to say, just give us a run. And the first thing he did is, after you merge, you had this new chief that, for us he wasn't from our department. I knew of him, but not well. Then he's pulling your trucks out of your building, and they're back in the blue and white Mac in your firehouse, and he's telling you this is how you're gonna run now.
Oh man.
And you're sitting there scratching your head like, okay, so obviously the first year is going to be the most difficult. And when I said that was the mistake, the only thing I would tell people if they're emerging, they said, what would you do different? I would say the two guys running for chief, whoever wins is chief, whoever loses is deputy. At least you have representation from both to kind of get through the first year. I think that's the one thing. Even the chiefs that were involved, the guys who were involved back then, we still talk about it, and they said they would have probably suggested the same thing when they do meet with other fire companies and they're heading in that direction. That there is still the identity there. You got to get through the first year.
Yes.
Our first year was, I'll tell you, it was horrible. It was just, the guy who took over, maybe he really wasn't the guy. Yep. And it turned out he wasn't. He only lasted 8 months, and he resigned and stepped down. And then the president appointed somebody to take his place to finish it out. But our good news was within that year, there was somebody who stepped up, and he was clear he was stepping up, and that was Chief Chuck Murtaugh.
Mm.
He was assistant chief in a union, and then through the merger, they actually knocked him down to like second captain. So here's a guy who was assistant chief in the O2 position, knocked down to the 5th position in the merger, and he was clear. He was our leader then, and he said, 1980 for 89, I'm running. Here's my vision, and this is where we're going. And he ran. He became chief January 1st, 1989, and it was his ball for 20 years. And he's the guy that takes us to the next level through the modernization, getting the department from 2 stations to 1 station, getting the fleet changed over, the color format. This is where we're going. This is our agenda, and this is the direction we're going in. And that's who I took over after.
Yeah, but that was a volunteer position, right?
Volunteer.
Because you are the first career fire chief for the Westville Fire Department.
Yeah, right, correct. Selected by the fire district. So so Chuck had to run every year and be voted in by the members. And then in the case of over years, it did one time. Obviously, within elections of firehouses, I off the top of my head, I can't remember what year that somebody did run against them, because you always have something going on, and Chuck won, continued. He did 20 years, but I knew in the back of his head, it probably had to be the worst time of year every year on that, because we knew he was our leader. He was the guy, and not that I ever had fear that he would lose. He always had our support on running through the whole thing. And then I get it on that point, because now, just to kind of side note, throw me in, I become his deputy chief. I was his deputy chief for almost like 12 years.
Yeah.
So there, now we're talking a generational thing, because now obviously when you guys in the firehouse, it's generation. Chuck being older than me, my guys are in, and then I have I have the chance to run.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you now, it never crossed my mind.
Really?
Yeah, never crossed my mind. And there's times we had conversations where I guess through the rumor mill. Yeah, I hear you. One time he came to me and said, "Are you running for chief?" And I told him to his face, "You never have to worry about me running for chief against you, ever." And I promised him that. Yeah. And it was just because the respect I had for him. I knew that he was taking us to the right place, and there was no replacing him. And so when it gets to the point where when Chuck is stepping down, obviously things are changing within the service of the business. I would say more, like I said, the business end of it, where within the firehouse, it's not saying you shouldn't be friendly to them, working thing, but it gets into voting and lining things up. And for us in Westville, the fire district wanted to get away from that. So they came to me and said, one, would you like to be chief? Two, if it is, we're going to appoint you to where you can do the job and you don't have to worry about, the other part of the fire service of who your friends are and who's going to vote for you. So I'm lucky enough to that, where I do my job. The 5 commissioners, as long as I keep them happy with what I'm doing, we're moving forward. I have a job. Chuck, Chuck on his part, he had to worry every November, December.
Yeah. How did then, I mean, you're very, very passionate about the history of this, of the departments and then the merger, the community in general, Westville. I mean, you're very dialed in and connected to the town that it is. Where is that all stem from the early days then of Shut Up and Listen and learning about all the history that came along with it? Because here you are 35 years after the merger, you threw a hell of a party and celebration to celebrate the progress of who you guys have become.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually happened by accident. It was an accident. So I'm upstairs in our meeting room that we set up at a small museum. I'm up there doing something.
And that should be said too, Chief. It is a small museum. There's a tremendous amount of history on display throughout your fire department, but your meeting room is a small, and again, that just goes to the passion you have for the history. So go.
But the funny part about that, to backtrack a little bit, all that was removed. When we merged, we had to remove everything. They removed union, they removed independent. We wiped everything out. It was so we have a time period where you weren't allowed to say union, you weren't allowed to say independent. It had to be removed. In the case of, I think when Chuck becomes chief in '89, his first big decision is, and he was from Union Fire Company, that he's shutting that building down. We're moving independent, and and Independence Firehouse is going to become the Westville Fire Department. At the time, all the apparatus fitting in this building. So it was get them all into one building. If they're gonna hate each other, they're gonna hate each other in one building.
Yeah.
Get them up the street. And then now we're guys from Union. We're in Independence Firehouse, and there's things here throwing flags to where. So there's probably 15, 20 years where things are in closets. You don't see anything. So again, obviously through time heals things, that things come back out, and we brought the museum out to start talking about our history. But lucky we didn't totally lose the history, because said, you've been here, you've seen our apparatus. A lot of the history was incorporated, so we were doing it without realizing we were doing it, and thank God we did that.
Yes, for sure.
Through the color schemes and the patterns.
Well, that's the thing. When two become one, they usually lose their identity, and then only years later does it come important again when we look back and go, man, we should have held on to some of those things from yesterday. And then all of a sudden it's like, and then we start asking around, and people are like, oh, I have this or I have that. Like, and we start to collect the belongings again. But I guess any department that's going through any type of merger or any entities where there's more than one coming in, don't lose track of your identity, right? It's the foundation from which you're built. And we can't just throw that to the wayside and not value it.
Well, lucky we did throw it by the wayside, but lucky it was in the closet where it was safe. And again, we were doing things where we didn't realize we were doing it, where we were incorporating it. So when it comes back out, like I said, it was a full circle that worked out. So like I said, it was an accident. I'm upstairs in the meeting room. I look down at a plaque, and it was a purchase plaque that was mounted on the front wall, Union Fire Company, and it said June 18th, 1921. And so this is in March of 2021. I look at the plaque and I said, man, this year is the 100th anniversary of the Union Fire Company purchasing the building on Broadway. They were originally in an old, barn on the west side of town in the Newbold section, and they purchased what was called Prosperity Hall on June 18th, 1921. I realized it's the 100th anniversary in a couple months, and I thought to myself, man, it would be neat to kind of honor that, but not that. I said the holes on the wall are still there. The brick is still there. The holes are there for the purchase plaque and the fireman's prayer that were in between the two bays. And I said, I wonder if I can get replicas made and maybe do something, but we don't own the building. So the next thing I had to do is I had to call the owner of the building, whose name was Frank Capano. And I called Frank and I said, and I kind of know Frank from, again, we handle the fire marshal's office doing fire inspections. So every time I'd go to the building, I would talk to him, and of course, again, going into history, that we walked through the building and I'm telling him things that went on in the building. This was here, this was there. And I've been doing that with Frank for, 30 years. So I said to him, I see this date. I said, you realize it's the 100th anniversary. And do you think we can do something? So nothing's going to happen unless Frank says yes. And he said, I'm on my way to the firehouse. He actually hangs up the phone, drives right here, looks at the purchase plaque, says to me, what do you want to do? And this is, again, this is happening quick. I said, the fire company don't even know about it. It's me looking at the plaque saying, I would like to do something. Frank turned to me and said, let's do it. Hands me the key to the building, says, you got full reign. Let's do this.
Wow. I love it.
Handed me the key to the building. And the key, the building now it's still exactly like the firehouse where the engine rooms are out today are, a brewery and some stores and everything. He says, but that's the key to everywhere else, whatever you need to do. And then I had to bring it back to the fire company. And I said to him, this is what I want to do. I want to honor the Union Fire Company. I want to try to go back and find everybody. Let's do a night on Broadway. And I'm looking at the dates. Turns out June 18th, 2021 is a Friday night. Let's do a whole program. Let me track everybody down. For the next couple of months, let's grab onto this. But again, and I said this during the night story when I was speaking, like the ghosts of our past like start haunting us. So I'm lining everything up for Union. The ball's kind of rolling. We got things going. I go into the independent books and I'm flicking and I'm reading. And it turns out, again, the Independent Fire Company, 1907, they were in a small barn on the Victoria section, also on the southwest side of town. And Union buys the building on Broadway in 1921. Well, Independent buys land, and the building we're in today is going to be going to be built in 1922. So we have 21-22. And then I realized, dates are lining up here almost, a year apart, where I can do something for Union. And what I do for Union, to be fair, I want to do the same thing to honor Independent. A year later, and the date falls in August 19th, 1922. That turns out to be a Friday night also. Huh. So I said, what better thing is, now let me do this. So now here's the next thing I got to do. I had to find all the members of the Union Fire Company. And some of these guys I haven't seen in 30 plus years.
Right.
And I want to honor them. And I'll be honest with you. And I said this later on. No time in my lifetime after the merger I ever thought we'd be honoring the Union Independent Fire Company ever again the way we did. And it turned out to be unbelievable. And when I talk about full circle, the neat story that happens is, as I'm looking for guys that I haven't seen that moved away, some passed away, and I'm working with guys who, do you know what happened to so and so? So I'm going through everything. I'm using Facebook. I'm using tax records.
It's a huge undertaking. Huge undertaking. Yeah.
Because my goal is, I have the 1987 book. So every member that was on the books in 1987, I have to talk to. I need to get them there. And anybody else who was members that joined and left and kind of, within the volunteer service come in, I invited everybody. If you were ever a member here, I want you here tonight. But the guys from 1987, I need them. There's something else that I need to do that I'm going to do for them, but I need to track them all down. So one of the funny stories, and it turned out to be one of the best, is I find everybody. I contact them, sending letters. There's this one guy I can't find, and I'm asking questions, and they say to me, I think he passed away. And everybody's telling me, no, I think he passed away. And I'm not finding anything on this guy.
Right.
And I'm looking, and I finally do a Google search, and his name comes up, but the age is different. So I'm thinking, maybe this is his son, but I don't remember him having kids. It's 35 years ago. Sure. I don't remember. So when it comes up to the neighboring town, I call a friend of mine in the neighboring town who lives in the same neighborhood. I said, do you know this guy? And the name was Tom Sears. He says, yeah, he's my neighbor. I actually have his phone number. Do you want to call him? So I said, yeah. I said, give me his number. So I call him. He answers. I tell him who I am, what I'm doing. I said, by any chance, is your father, Tom Sears, who was a member of Union Fire Company in 1987? He says, yeah, it's my dad. So I'm like, good. Now here's the question I have to ask, because they're telling me I'm here and
I have
to ask the question. I said, by any chance, is your dad around? He says, yeah, he's in West Virginia right now. He's probably sitting home. What, you want his number?
No kidding.
And I said, yeah. So I found him. I called him in West Virginia. He gets on the phone. I tell him who I am. He doesn't remember me, because at the time he's a member. I'm only 16,
sure.
17 years old.
Sure.
Again, I didn't talk that much. He's telling me the guys he remembered. And so we're talking. He realizes I know what I'm talking about. He says to me, I live in West Virginia, but I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be there.
That's awesome.
Right. And he showed up that night, and this guy, when you talk about full circle, one, I'm glad I found him and he was okay. Two, he shows up wearing, it looked to be brand new, last edition Union Fire Company t-shirt he's wearing.
No kidding.
Yeah, he made the night. He walked around, said hello to everybody, greeting everybody. He talked, but what the payoff was this: he grabs me at the end of the night, at the end of the ceremonies, and he says, "I have to talk to you." He says, I wasn't happy about this merger. I didn't like it. I didn't want any parts of it." He looked at me and says, "Have you ever been happy that you were wrong?" That's what he said to me.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
powerful,
So,
man.
yeah. And it made it full circle because, again, a part of when I talk about the merger, it was about modernization of the fleet. And that's what it was about. And I made sure that at both cases of Union Independent, when we were setting up the ramps for the ceremonies and the chairs were in the street where the firemen were going to sit from the past, I made sure that I said, I need our fleet surrounding them. I need a truck to the right, I need a truck to the left, and I need a truck to the rear of them. Because when I speak, there's something I want to speak to them, and I cover it within the speech. I said, now to the members of 1987, I said to them, I want you to know that you are surrounded by your sacrifice.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was the fleet around them. If it wasn't for you and the decision you made in 1987 to modernize this fire department, and I told them it was your sacrifice, you voted yes. It was the best and hardest decision you ever had to make. But I'm telling you today, we are okay because of your decision and your sacrifice, and you are surrounded by it tonight. That we have one of the best fleets in the county because of you. And
Incredible.
we covered that with both fire companies, and hopefully in the end, the guys who did walk out, they came back. They said hello. It was great seeing them. And I just hope that at the end they left those nights
I'm
saying that
I'm
their service
sure
was
they
wrong.
did. I'm sure that it was overwhelming for them. Not only that, but too often tradition in the past is lost and the history is lost and it doesn't have it the same meaning that it had years ago. And for you to do all this legwork and to lead the charge with your department to recognize those from 1987, to recognize their sacrifices. And, it's always about doing the right thing. And a lot of members probably shook loose during that merger, but they knew it was the right thing, the majority of them. And then for you to bring this full circle years later, they know it was the right thing. And to see what they've done, they were the foundational bricks that pushed the department forward. That's huge, man. That's why it's so important. The integrity of those that have come before us. Like, this is what legacy is all about.
Yeah, the other part is I had to set up. Like I said again, on the ramp facing them was the membership of today. Those guys sat there looking across the street at the generation that put us to where we're at, and
Yeah.
that's the other part I wanted to show, and I wanted it to bring back.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So now this modernized fire department that you now run, this combination department, not only did they modernize the fleet after the merger, but you guys are putting career people on. And, whether per diem or full time, as well as volunteers. The department has grown. You guys run in a county type dispatch system. So you're running boxes with other departments. Talk to me about today. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on yesterday. What's going on today?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, today, like I said, again, modernizing the fleet, being a part. So now today, we're obviously, like I said, with the issue we had back then, financial, again, we're okay today with the tax base and handling, keeping the department moving forward between gear, apparatus, training. He said, you get into now, we're at the staffing issue. Again, that's why we had to bring on career staffing. We were a community that had, shift workers that went away where daytime was being left open.
Right.
Obviously, like I said, when you talk about statistics and run numbers, I can tell you in 1986, we ran 96 calls. We were getting excited. We were going to hit 100. We were getting there. Today we're doing anywhere from 12 to 1400.
Right.
So it changed. And then through that, again, back then when we went to a dwelling fire, it was Union Independent. We put two departments on the street with 80 guys. Today we're running, full blown task forces on assignments, working with more of our surrounding communities. And in some cases, with fire coordination through the county and the way things are going, there's days that, just last Thursday, I was in Bridgeton. I'm 35 miles south of Westville at a 4-alarm, warehouse fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just the way things have changed in that aspect.
I feel, it's funny you say that because I feel like it's changing ever quickly, meaning like years ago, change didn't happen overnight. And now today, things are changing at such a rapid pace that it's almost a daily thing where something new pops up and you go, man, never thought that was going to happen,
Well, yeah. And I also talk about it, not to go back to the merger, but we merged at the right time. And I said, and I say this in 1988, you think of the fire service of, again, open cabs from the jump seat areas to I was still in pull up boots, the Philadelphia helmet, no portables. The portables. The chief had a radio. The rest of us, you didn't. The way the equipment was. So we come in when the fire service is changing, and I said when we merged, I think it was a great time to where modernization within the fire service coming out of that 70s, 80s into the 90s to where we're going into full bunker gear, we're going into closed cabs. SCBAs are being updated to where there's pass devices. We didn't have that. So it was a good time. I'd say we made the jump at the right time. So timing was good for us to lead us into the next phase to where we're at today. And when you talk about moving places and we come in the morning, I can tell you in the 80s, if there was a fire 3 communities over, 10 miles away, there was no way we were going.
Right.
We'd sit here on the radio and listen to it. Today, something pops today. I'm grabbing my stuff saying, oh, there's a good chance I'm leaving. And they said last Thursday, we're sitting at, in the morning having our coffee and somebody says, hey, there's a fire in Bridgeton. It's going multi-alarms. And I remember, and I laughed and said, well, that's the last place I went end up today. And it turns out I ended up in Bridgeton. So it's crazy. Again, that would never happen before. And then, I understand it's the staffing levels and everything. And, for us, we get plucked a lot because one, we are staffed during the day.
Yep.
But the good thing for us, where we sit at in the county, we're up in the northwest corner. I'm surrounded by, career staffing, the municipalities around us. So it's easy to pluck us, to send us, because I'm automatically backed up. I'm sitting in a safe, quadrant of the county where if we get plucked during the day, I have the other municipalities around me backing me up to where, we're okay. So I understand that's why sometimes, that, and then you hope, like any other volunteer fire company on it, you hope it's because your reputation, you hope it's because you're being sent because you have good guys, they listen, they follow instructions, and they're easy to work with. I mean, that's the other part of it. And that's full blown through the department, through the career side, the volunteer side. But the difference, the way we kind of operate is on our career side. And I say this a lot, and this is the part of the combination of departments. And a lot of people say, how do you guys do it? Because there's no interference from career to volunteer. I said, one, because we're still a part of it. But two, our motto during the day is to make the volunteer staff successful. That's what we do. We work during the day. We have our own job titles. The 3 of us, we're doing 3 different things. But whatever we can do in the firehouse through training, preparing for training, keeping the fleet up, handling small tasks to make them successful, that's our goal. If we're successful there, they're doing the same for us. At nighttime, they're coming in, they're respecting what we do during the day. They're doing the same thing. They're not leaving, stuff off the trucks, or hey, they'll get it in the morning. They know they can't do that. They have to have everything done. We're both on the same page. So that's something that works for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's just an incredible mutual respect there, and I think that that's the foundation from which it was built upon. But you're also a steward of that. I mean, like the tradition of the firehouse and the importance of the history for you, you're the guy that keeps pushing that forward. You're that bridge, right? You're the one that's bridging that gap between the new and the old, and you need to find your next guy that's going to take that spot from you.
You jumped the gun on that. That's right where I was heading.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at. I'm hoping, the next guy. I mean, the joke is it's my 9-year-old son, and I don't want it to be him. He comes in here, he knows everything going on. He kind of has the flow and everything, but
sure.
I don't want to put that burden on him. I'm hoping it's somebody else. I'm fine, if it is, because again, he's a lot of me and some traits, and hanging out with yourself sometimes isn't the most fun thing, but he's great towards it. And again, I don't know what path he's going in. I'm one of those ones, you pick your path and everything. If it's him, I'm fine with it. But in some cases, you realize, being in the service, there's some burdens on you that you don't want to pass on to others. And, that would be his decision. But I'm hoping for our persons here that grab it. So when I am gone, somebody can sit at the table and explain where we came from. again, the way the fire service is going, there's talk of, everybody gets into where is it heading? Is it going to a
Sure.
full blown county system?
Yeah.
Are we going to be here? And we made it 35 years. Are we, going to be here another 35? And that's what, again, that I said, you talked about the Union Independent. We're heading towards our third part of the celebration is our 35th. And we're trying to decide how do we celebrate that. And we decided that we're going to do it on an open house, that we're going to do a ceremony then an open house, because we want to tell the community what we accomplished in 35 years, where we're at. But we have to lay the base down to them, saying, if you don't support us, that's the key. I mean,
Yeah.
the only way for us to be successful is this community. And again, we're only a 1.4 square mile, 4,200 residents community with 1,800 residential homes. If you don't support us, where's the next phase? And we go to a lot of community events, meetings, and I lay it out every time. We're lucky enough that we have a good volunteer fire department. We are supported by career during the day. Our goal is to hold it at this, but if you stop supporting us and the town stops sending us volunteers, the move has to be made. So at least I'm laying everything out, hoping it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, they were warned, and handling it within. They can follow you where it's being laid out and is trying to manage it. Again, I have to worry about, again, I love history. I cover that. But my job today is today. I have to worry about today, where we're at today, where we're at training today. And the next part of my job is the future.
Yeah.
So you said, I'm that guy. I have the three realms I have to worry about. I handle the history. I handle today that I have to manage to get through day. And everybody would tell you, my wife will tell you, how was your day or what's going on? And I always say, I just want to get through today. And I just get through the day to move forward. But I have to worry about the future. Who is replacing me? Who is next up? What is our goals and where are we heading? As a full staff, are we going to have full staffing? Where are we heading? So, I mean, I said there's a lot on the plate, and I like talking to the chiefs today that we have these conversations. If even we really didn't within our conversation of firefighting regionally where we're at, but I like talking to the retired chiefs that are still active that come out and we talk and I use for myself. I base everything on their knowledge of their experience. And then listen, any fire chief will tell you, and when you get in that tough position and there's something going on, and I have to make a decision, I talk to guys that were in the position that were there, that are here, and I run things past them just to make sure I'm on the right path. And hey, let me bounce this off you. And you got your key guys that did a hell of a job in
100%.
their career.
Yep.
And you go to them.
The sounding board.
Yeah, and I tell our guys, and there's times when a big decision gets made. In most cases, it wasn't just me. I'm bouncing it off my deputy chief. I'm bouncing it off the officers. In some cases, I'm bouncing off somebody who had a lot more experience than I did, just to make sure that we're on the right path. And it's rare that a decision that I made was directly 100%. This was mine, and this is what I'm saying. I normally don't work that way.
Yeah. Man, you got a lot going on, Chief. Not going to lie. You're balancing and juggling a lot of things. And I do want to hit on two other things. You and I were talking about like topics to talk about, and we talked about some operational stuff, and we haven't even gotten there. We're going to have to save that for another time. But I do want to touch on two things that you brought up, and they stand out to me. One, the hoagie sales. You guys still do these. And, you were talking about, the yesteryear of that's how money was raised through programs like the hoagie sale and bingo and things like that. You guys still do the hoagie sales. And is it more of a traditional project or is it still a source of I'm just really intrigued by it because I remember as a kid growing up, the high school, the fire departments, the Lions Club, the Newcomers Club, all these different clubs in town would do different types of fundraisers. And the hoagie sale was always one that they would actually, you could go pick them up or they deliver them to your house. I don't know if this is like a New Jersey thing or what, but talk to me a little bit about the hoagie sale. You guys still do it.
All right. So obviously it's like almost two separate entities, kind of when you say like church and state. Obviously the Westville Fire District.
Right.
The Westville Fire District, the tax entity, they're handling the firefighting, the equipment, the gear, they're handling all that. But the property itself, the building and everything belongs to the Westville Fire Department. We would say it's the so-called, the men's club. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, this is the social side, right? Absolutely.
The social side. So, but So the hoagie sales, obviously, it's something that the town always enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yes, the funding comes back in because obviously under the firehouse, membership, we own that. We pay for electric to be on. We're paying for the modernization of the building,
Sure.
painting, carpeting, keeping the lights on. But I'm a fan of the hoagie sale. And we do well with just the attendance and the membership. It's a team building thing.
I love that.
And they'll be the first one in the beginning. I was kind of, but I was on the scale of, again, because the hoagie sales were originally ladies auxiliary, and we lost the ladies auxiliary again just through people being too busy. And the
Yeah, I get it.
And I was at first, I'm like, what do you mean we're taking it over? And the guys are taking it over. So in the beginning years, I wasn't a fan of it. I came around and I realized again, and I hate to say it, I enjoy them. It's the third Saturday. All the guys mostly are here. It's for us, and we're still we're old school. We still make them.
No way, really?
Well, we build the whole thing. We got to line up. Everybody has their jobs, and
Oh,
I'm not
God.
allowed to take somebody else's job. If I jump in his spot, he's getting mad at me. So you come in. Everybody has their gig. They come in. They line up. They build them. But on that, it's 45 minutes. We're done. And I guess I enjoy the next part. After we get done, we clean up. The residents from the town, they're here. They're banging on the doors. We got guys in front of the rescue. They're selling them. There's people coming in and out. We always have the coffee's on, the donuts are on the table, and that's where the team building is, because everything that we basically just been talking about for the past hour,
Yeah.
it's going on the table. We're talking, we're communicating, we're covering other things. It's an unofficial meeting, and on hoagie sale day, the other generation is there. So the older guys are there, the retired guys, the new guys, the brand new guys. Everything's laid out,
I
and
love it.
we do well. Our staffing levels for. I mean, there's sometimes there's too many people here. They're complaining that we got too many guys here where we're hitting each other, and then just go off. Go make the coffee. We'll be in a minute. So it works for us, but it's also being a part of the community. That was the other thing we were after, staying ties with the community. Like you said, over the years when communities change, here, things change, and some things didn't change for the better, to where we got involved to change the community back to get it back to that point. And
Right.
then everything we try to do is community based from what we participate in, or we try to bring them here to the building to let them know what we're doing here. But the hoagie sales is a big thing.
It's so
And I
cool,
know
man.
if we ever got rid of them, they'd go crazy. So
It's so cool. It's this nostalgia of it, right? Like,
yeah,
it's something that's been going on for a very long time. And I'm sure it doesn't raise incredible money, but it's more about what it stands for. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was hoping. And that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because I think we need more of that. A lot of programs like that in fire departments that have been around for a very long time are disappearing. And something like this, as simple as a hoagie sale on the third Saturday of the month, the longtime residents have come to rely on it, depend on it. It gives them a view of the firehouse. It gives them a view of the membership. There's this, sense of community, that give back. Even though they're paying for these sandwiches, it's more about the fire department giving back, and they're supporting you. And then it's that team build. That's the first thing you said, was team building.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
Yeah, and so when I walk in on hook, I'm a member. I'm not in charge of that. I don't order you what to do. I get in line and tell
Hell
me where
yeah.
you need me,
Yeah.
and I go in that direction. When I'm done, I grab my coffee, I sit down, and everybody sits around in the circle, and we kill 2-3 hours, and we help clean up, and then we're all done. We'll see you later. Who's available? Anything happens, and we go on our way.
I absolutely love that. The other thing, too, I wanted to mention this because it reminds me of something else. So not far from me, Mahwah, New Jersey Fire Department, they do a pizza at their Company 4. They have 5 stations in their town. It's a pretty large town. Company 4 does a pizza night. And it's a Friday night, like once or twice a month. And I think they only do it for a couple months. Then they take time off. Then they come back to it. But they open it up to the community. You can order. You show up. They got pizzas being made at the firehouse. And on Friday night, you can stop in, get pizza, get fresh cookies, and just either sit there and eat or take it home. And I stopped over. One of the guys that helps with National Fire Radio is a battalion chief there. And he was talking about it. So I stopped over on a Friday night. I loved everything I saw about what they were doing. Everybody's in the kitchen working. Wives, girlfriends are out front helping. And it's like, you know what? There is still that sense of community, and the importance of what we do is giving back to the community. And then when we can do it through a program like that, where it brings our people together as well, and it creates a sense of family, within the firehouse, where you could bring your kids and bring your wives and they help, and everybody's a part of it while making a few dollars for the fire company. It's a freaking win, bro. It's a win.
Yeah, and you just hit on something on that when it comes to the kids. And in the case of Hoagie Sale, my two kids, my son and daughter are here. They remind me it's Hoagie Sale. I know in the morning we get up, we all come here and we push the other guys. Bring your kids. We don't put the kids in the firehouse now. That's the next thing. That's the next generation up. And and on Hoagie Sale Day, the kids are running around the building. They know where they're allowed to go, where they're allowed to play, and making it a part of it. And I said we have to bring the kids, because that's, again, they're the next ones up.
I love it. It's so important. Yeah. And the last thing I want to hit on, which I fell in love with the first time I stopped at your firehouse, we were doing some apparatus innovation stuff on your apparatus and the firehouse, and I like to wander, and then I turn the corner, I walk into your gear room. Okay. And I literally stopped in my tracks, and I fell in love with it. I want to explain it to everybody that's listening, and then I'd love to hear why and how it all came to be. But the gear storage room for you guys looks like a NFL locker room, meaning it's not just this musty, dirty space where we hang our gear after our shift, after our tour. As a volunteer, you hang it up after the run. Everybody has a locker. It's carpeted. There's chairs and seats in there, and it literally looks like a pro team's locker room where everything can be done within, meaning the good plays, the bad plays, the critiques, the laughs, the tears, all of it is done in that room.
Yep.
I love it. Talk to me about how that came to be.
That's exactly how it happened. I went to Citizens Bank Park for a regional highway safety seminar, and obviously at the end of the seminar, to give you a tour of Citizens Bank Park, and they're taking us around the stadium, and eventually they take us down into the Phillies clubhouse. When I'm standing in the Phillies clubhouse and I'm looking around, the same thing: the carpet, the lockers,
awesome.
The table, the TVs, and we had a room off of our engine room that wasn't being utilized. It was just it used to be a small bingo hall when we had bingo, and 30 years ago. And I remember turning to somebody, and it just clicked on me, saying, "My God!" I said, "I could do the same thing." I said, "We have that room."
I love it.
I said, and the same thing. You look at it, and that's exactly how it came out. It came out of the Philadelphia Phillies, being in that room, and them being a team, and the concept of what they do in that room. I came back. Again, being within the building, it's not my part of it. I had to go to the trustees. Yeah, we're not utilizing this room. Here's my vision. Let's do this. Let's do this. And we did it. We ripped the lockers out of the engine room. We slid them all over. We put a table in. We put TV in. We put a computer in. We put a phone in, and we made that our area to where that's where we live at. We have a radio room on the opposite side of the building that we used to be in. Nobody sits in it anymore.
Yeah.
We're all on the other side.
Yeah.
But it works out for communication. It works out for, like you said, drill night before we're going out. Everybody's getting dressed. Whoever's in charge makes their announcements. They go through everything. We come back, gear off. It has the chairs are in there, and they pull their chairs around. They sit down. It's an environment, like you said, that we communicate, we talk, cover the good stuff, the bad stuff, where we're going, and it's just an area for them to be a part of. And it was by accident. It was going to the ballpark that day for a safety highway safety seminar that it just clicked and said that we can do that, and it's been successful. Besides, it said the hardest part when people walk in and says, man, you have carpeting in here, and I said, I know that's the hardest part of it. It has to be a clean room, and then that's the next thing. Lucky, we go on jobs and the guys know that their stuff has to be clean before it goes back in, and you follow us. People laugh. We come back from a highway run where our boots are contaminated, that and we post pictures of it on our social media, where you see the boots on cones outside being scrubbed.
I love it.
They can't go back in, but what we gained from it was more than anything, because one, the gear is being maintained better. That's the number one thing, because obviously if you don't clean your gear, I catch it a lot quicker. When you walk in the room and you're like, oh my God, what's burning in here? But you didn't clean your gear, get out of here. So we're maintaining that. But the main part was to put the guys in a room as a team and explain to them that, we are a team, bottom line, and this is where we're going to do everything out of. It worked for us. And
go ahead.
And then the neat thing is, like I said, when we do get visitors, or I know on cover assignments, that's the first room everybody walks into. Everybody goes directly to that room and they look around. So it was an accidental bonus for us that really works.
I freaking love it. I absolutely love it because, a kid that grew up playing sports, and you had locker room time before practice, before games, after practice, after games. That's where everything went down, man. And, like, for the fire service to have a place like that where your gear is hanging up, your lids are up on the rack, those are the scars of the fire ground. Those are the talking points. You look up when you take a second and you have these memories and flashbacks of things that you've done over your career, but you're doing it when you're sitting down in front of your stuff and everybody's there. You come back from a kick-ass fire, and everybody takes a knee, right? Their gear's left to clean outside. You just sit down for a minute, catch your breath. You put your sneakers back on, whatever it is. And, you just have a second. And that's where you have those impromptu moments of camaraderie, compassion, shed a tear, have a laugh. It's all done right there. The amount of memories that are happening within those walls of your building, especially that room, man. I love the idea of the locker room. I wish more people know that concept and be willing to try it. I think it would bolster, camaraderie and communication within the fire company.
Yeah, it was an accident that worked. And like you said, coming back 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Taking that couple minutes to wind down, to get tired, to go back home, to go to bed. It's been successful for us.
I love it. Chief,
Yeah.
Thank you. What a great conversation today. Very proud of what you've done, and I say that as a friend. You and I have gotten to know each other, and I know how hard you work and how passionate you are about the Westville, New Jersey Fire Department, but as well as your people and the community you serve, and it certainly shows in everything that you guys do, whether on the fire ground or back at the firehouse. Chief, thanks for joining me today. What a great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're always welcome here. And actually, I think I'll be down that way on Friday, so I might be knocking on your door if you're in.
I'll be here.
Beautiful. Well, brother, thank you for joining me today. I truly appreciate it. Hang out right here. I'm just going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, okay? Hang on. Everyone, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio podcast. We want to hear from you. Podcast at nationalfireradio.com is the email. Send us an email. Tell us your thoughts, your ideas, the things you like and don't like. I got thick skin. Let it fly. And like I always say when I close out the podcast, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse kitchen table, and talk about it. Because as we talk about the job, we certainly make the job better. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.